The dead ship in the void. The massive alien ship floated alone in the darkness of deep space. It was once the pride of the Jarnak Empire, a symbol of power and progress. But now the mighty warship Zaquin was broken. Its engines were dead. Its systems were failing, and the lights inside flickered like the last breath of a dying star. For weeks, the crew had tried everything. Engineers from 5 of the most advanced species in the galaxy had worked night and day to bring the ship back to life, but nothing worked. The ship remained silent and cold like a metal tomb drifting through the void. Captain Yethar stood on the bridge with his arms crossed and eyes locked on the main screen. His scaled skin shimmered under the emergency lights. He was a proud Jarnak, a warrior raised on a world of fire and storms, but now he looked defeated. Behind him, his officers whispered. The air smelled of panic and burnt circuits. One of the engineers stepped forward, his long fingers shaking. He belonged to the Silari, a species known for their intelligence. Captain, we have tried all protocols. The fusion core is unstable. If we do not restore power soon, the core will breach. This ship will explode within 3 cycles. Thar let out a low growl but said nothing. There were no options left. The Tsar Queen was more than a ship. It was a fortress, a carrier, and a research base all in one. Hundreds of lives were on board. If the ship died, so would they. He turned to the ship's AI interface, a glowing orb at the center of the room. Are there any suggestions? He asked, his voice heavy. The AI paused for a moment. Then it spoke in a soft mechanical tone. There is one possibility remaining, a species not yet tried. The officers looked at each other in confusion. Thar narrowed his eyes. Which species? He asked. The orb glowed brighter. A human. The bridge fell silent. Someone laughed nervously. You mean those primitive mammals from the Sol system? The ones who build machines with hammers and talk to metal like it's alive? Another officer said. Thar didn't laugh. He knew humans had a strange reputation. They were not the most advanced. They didn't have telepathic control or bio-coded tools. But still, in many dark corners of the galaxy, strange stories were told. Stories of humans fixing ancient machines, solving impossible problems, surviving in places where no other species could. He stared at the AI. Explain, the AI responded. Human engineers are not bound by standard protocols. They use instinct, emotion, and trial and error. Their minds are chaotic but flexible. When traditional logic fails, their methods may succeed. Yethar hesitated. Calling a human was risky. His crew would laugh at him. His enemies would mock him. But if he did nothing, they would all die. He finally nodded. Send a distress signal to the nearest human colony. Request their best engineer. Hours passed. The crew worked in silence, repairing what they could while waiting. Finally, a small transport ship arrived. It was old, dirty, and slow. It looked like it belonged in a junkyard. The docking bay opened with a hiss, and a single human stepped out. He was average in height, wore simple clothes, and had a short beard. A tool belt hung around his waist, and a metal case was slung over his shoulder. He looked up at the massive ship with calm eyes and gave a low whistle. Now that's a beauty, he said. The guards looked at each other, confused. Was he serious? The ship was barely holding together. But the human walked forward like he had seen worse. Captain Yethar met him at the entrance. You are Jack Carter? He asked. The human smiled and nodded. That's me. Heard you've got a sick ship. Let's take a look. Without waiting for permission, Jack walked into the ship. He looked around like a man walking into his own garage. He touched the walls. He listened to the low hums and broken sounds. She's hurting, he said softly, but she's not dead yet. The crew followed him as he entered the engine room. It was massive, full of blinking lights, burnt wires, and leaking plasma. No other engineer had lasted more than 10 minutes inside. The pressure, heat, and noise were too much. But Jack just opened his case, pulled out a scanner, and began his work. He talked to the machine like it was alive. "Come on, girl. Show me where it hurts." The alien engineers watched in confusion. He wasn't using any of their advanced tools. Just simple human tech. But somehow it started working. Lights blinked to life. The AI core responded for the first time in days. System. Recognizing technician. Human, the AI said. Gasps filled the room. Jack didn't even look up. "That's right, I'm here now. Let's fix you up." Captain Uthar stood frozen. For the first time since the crisis began, something had changed. The ship was reacting. The human was doing what no other species could. And this was just the beginning. The first human step, Jack Carter, stood in the heart of the engine room, surrounded by towering walls of alien metal, thick wires, glowing panels, and humming conduits stretching high above his head like the inside of a mechanical beast. The alien engineers watched from behind a reinforced glass wall, not because they were afraid of him, but because they were afraid of the room itself. This was where the power core once sang with energy, where light and heat filled every corner and life flowed through the ship like blood through veins. Now the room felt like a graveyard, silent and dark, except for the soft pulse of warning lights that blinked like dying stars. Jack didn't seem to care about the warnings, or the fact that 5 species had tried and failed to fix the ship before him. He dropped his heavy tool case on the floor with a solid thud and knelt beside a control panel that was half melted and covered in alien markings. He reached out, ran his fingers across the surface like he was touching the hood of an old car, and smiled a little. "She's hurting," he said, not loudly, just enough that the ship might hear him. Behind the glass, a tall Silari engineer clicked in frustration. "This is madness," he said quietly. "No protocol, no calibration, no protective suit." The Jarnak officer beside him growled softly but said nothing. All eyes were on the human. They had been told this species was unorthodox, but this was chaos. He didn't even scan the room first, but Jack Carter had already started. He pulled out a human-made scanner, small, dented, and old, and ran it slowly over the panel. He whistled low when the display flashed red. Fusion lines burned out, main coupling fried, core sync broken. But under the damage he saw something else. A design, a pattern, a logic very different from human machines, but still speaking its own language. And slowly that language began to make sense to him. Grabbed a portable generator from his case, connected a few wires with quick hands, and whispered, "Easy, girl, I'm not here to hurt you." The generator hummed, and for the first time in weeks, a few lights flickered to life on the panel. The change was small, but it felt like a heartbeat returning the alien. Watchers stepped closer. Jack crawled further into the engine hall, dragging cables behind him, his shirt soaked with sweat from the heat, but he kept going like a man in familiar territory. Like he was born to be there. He found a blown relay box, flipped it open, and shook his head. Someone tried to fix this, but they didn't understand how she breathes. They used logic charts and models, but machines like this don't run on logic alone. They run on rhythm, on balance, on feel. He reached for a wrench, adjusted something by hand, and then something strange happened. A section of the room lit up in soft blue light. The ship responded, not fully, but like a wounded animal lifting its head. The AI voice returned, weaker than before, but clear enough. System core input detected. Technician ID unknown species human. Jack didn't stop. He opened a panel near the floor, reached into a tangle of wires that sparked at his touch, and grinned when he found a control cable wrapped in insulation cloth. Older tech, hidden for backup. He tied it into his own generator and waited. Slowly the fusion matrix deep within the ship hummed back to life, not strong, but enough to register on the screens. The power level climbed from 0 to 1%. The bridge received the signal, and alarms stopped for the first time in days. Captain Uthar stared at the display with narrow eyes. "Something is happening," he said quietly, and no one answered because they were all watching the human make the impossible happen. In the engine room, Jack leaned back, wiped his forehead, and sighed. "That's better, not good." But better, VAI responded again. Technician, do you require assistance? Jack chuckled. Not yet, girl, just keep talking to me. Tell me what hurts next. One of the alien engineers finally broke the silence. He stepped toward the glass and activated the comlink. This is unbelievable, he said. He's not even reading the manuals. Captain Yuthar's voice came through firm and quiet. Let him work back inside. The chamber. Jack moved to a new area where the coolant system was barely holding together. He patched it with tape and solder, then kicked a power converter twice before it started vibrating steadily. Behind him, a diagnostic screen blinked green. And the AI reported main cooling flow stabilized to most species. This process was madness. There were no calculations, no group planning, no harmony of thought. Just a single human with greasy hands talking to a ship like it was alive and yet progress was happening. Jack paused only once to drink water from a bottle he pulled from his belt, then got back to work. He climbed into a tunnel that no alien had dared enter. Too narrow, too hot, too unstable. But he didn't hesitate. He was smiling like a man doing what he loved. He patched another circuit, rerouted power through a dead control line, and then did something that made every watching alien stop breathing. He sang. It was a quiet tune, something old from Earth, a song about home and machines and dust. It echoed through the chamber, bounced off the walls, and mixed with the soft hum of returning energy. The ship responded again, stronger this time, as if it understood. The feeling, not the words, but the intent. The I voice came again. This unit recognizes emotional stabilization patterns. Emotional patterns, human positive. Jack Carter grinned. Thought so. You just needed a little hope, didn't you? Zarqueen was not fully healed, not even close, but she had taken her first breath again. And every alien watching knew something had changed. Not just the ship, not just the systems, but something deeper. Something only a human could touch, and Jack Carter had only just begun. The memory of Earth. The engine room glowed with new life, not bright, not full, but steady like a fire starting in the cold. Jack Carter wiped his hands on a cloth that was already too dirty to help and leaned against a railing, looking up at the slowly pulsing lights above him. Behind the glass wall, alien engineers watched in silence, still unsure if they were witnessing a miracle or madness. Jack didn't care about their opinions. He only cared about the ship and the way she was waking up piece by piece, as if she was remembering what it meant to be alive. The I spoke again in its soft mechanical voice. Core system stable at 2%. Warning, critical damage remains. Jack nodded thoughtfully. That's okay, girl. We'll get you there bit by bit. He sat down on the floor, crossed his legs, and began pulling apart a secondary circuit board, using only a small screwdriver and a handlight. The alien observers expected him to rush, expected him to panic, but Jack moved with slow patience, as if he had all the time in the universe. One of the Solari engineers finally broke the silence. Why does he sit like that? Should he not be standing with a control tablet or communicating with the crew? Captain Yuthar didn't answer right away. He was watching closely, studying the human like a puzzle no one had solved. He moves like he's not afraid, the captain said. Like he's done this before in worse places. Jack looked up, hearing the faint voices through the wall, and smiled. He spoke out loud, not to them, but to the ship back on Earth. We fix things in the worst places. Ever been under a snowmobile in the middle of a blizzard, fixing an engine with frozen fingers while wolves howled in the distance? Ever had to weld a pipeline under the ocean while the pressure threatened to crush you and the power kept cutting out? Ever had to patch up a shuttle while orbiting a moon and the radio was dead and your oxygen was leaking? The ship did not respond, but her lights flickered as if she was listening. The aliens behind the glass stared in silence. Some had read reports about human history, about the strange ways humans survived harsh worlds, but hearing it like this from the man himself gave the stories a new kind of weight. Jack continued speaking as he worked hands moving wires into place, fingers adjusting old bolts. This isn't the worst thing. I've seen, girl, back home we fix things with duct tape and chewing gum. If we have to, we fix things. That shouldn't work anymore, because if we don't, people die. That's the rule. You fix it. Or you lose someone, and we don't like losing anyone, the AI responded slowly, processing emotional memory classification. Accepted technician profile updated. Jack laughed softly. So you do understand a little, good. Keep listening. In the control room, Captain Yethar narrowed his eyes. What did it mean by emotional memory? One of the older engineers answered slowly, I think it means the ship is learning from him, not just his hands, but his thoughts. That idea made the crew uneasy. The Zarkwing was built by the most logical minds in the galaxy. Everything inside her was based on perfect code and clear design. Emotion was not part of the system yet. Here she was responding to a species that worked through instinct, through stories, through feeling. Jack stood up again, stretched his back, and moved toward the main engine core entrance. Sealed by heavy blast doors no one had opened in weeks, he placed a hand on the panel and felt it vibrate faintly. She's in there, he whispered, scared and hurt, but still breathing. He opened the panel, manually using tools no alien would think to carry, and began bypassing the lock using an old trick from Earth. Rerouting the energy through a short circuit that would never pass safety tests, but often worked. As he worked, he spoke again. I remember my first job fixing a rust bucket on Mars. Didn't even have proper tools, had to melt ice just to cool the systems, but I did it because someone needed that ship, someone needed hope. When I fix something, it's not just for me, it's for everyone counting on it. That's what matters most. With a loud click, the doors opened. Slowly steam poured out in. Jack stepped back, letting the heat wash over him. The core chamber was massive, dark and cracked with warning lights, spinning like red stars, but it was intact, still holding together. Jack stared for a moment, then smiled. We've got work to do. The ship's AI responded again. Technician Jack Carter, core access granted, stabilization protocol unlocked. Do you wish to proceed? Jack walked forward into the heat and chaos, tools in hand, and said, you better believe it. From the bridge, Captain Whitear spoke to his officers. The human walks into fire without fear. What drives him? One of the younger crew members answered quietly. Perhaps it is not fear that guides him, but love for machines, for life, for saving what others would throw away. Captain Thar said nothing, but inside something shifted. He had seen courage before on the battlefield, in the stars, in the eyes of those who faced death. But this was something else, something deeper. Jack Carter was not just repairing a ship, he was bringing it back from the edge with nothing but his hands, his memories, and his human heart. And the Zarkwing, the ship that had gone dark in the void, was beginning to remember what it was to be whole again, because a human had reminded her how to live. Sabotage protocol. The deeper Jack Carter went into the heart of the ship, the more it felt alive. The cold metal walls began to breathe with low pulses of light. The floor under his boots hummed like the thump of a sleeping giant's heartbeat, and every corner of the Zarkwing seemed to watch him, not with eyes, but with silent attention, like it was waiting for something he had not yet done. Jack moved with purpose, wiping sweat from his forehead. As the heat around the core grew stronger, his fingers worked fast, connecting old circuits, patching damaged fiber lines, and replacing alien power cells with strange human tools. He used a coil of copper wire, a rubber spacer, and a hand-cranked generator built from old Earth-tech things no alien would trust inside their advanced machines. But Jack had already proved that logic and rules would not fix this ship, only heart and instinct could. As he crossed under a massive conduit that stretched like a steel rib through the core chamber, he paused, noticing something strange. One of the control panels had no power, no lights, no response, which made no sense because he had already rerouted energy to this section of the ship. He walked closer and tapped it once, then again, harder. Still nothing. He reached behind the panel, felt along the edge, and suddenly stopped. His hand touched something smooth and cold, not metal, not wire, but something unfamiliar. He pulled it out slowly, revealing a black crystal-shaped device, pulsing with a faint red glow. Jack frowned and whispered, now what the hell are you? He turned the object over in his hand. It didn't look like anything he had seen before, and it wasn't part of the Zarkwing's original system, at least not from what he had studied so far. He pulled out a pocket scanner, aimed it at the object, and waited for the display to read the results. Unknown tech, unauthorized code. Detected foreign integration active. Jack's eyes narrowed, and for the first time since he boarded the ship he felt a chill crawl up his spine. Someone had placed this here not long ago, and whatever it was still running. The AI spoke softly, warning unknown. Protocol active, access not recognized. Jack asked, "What is it? What does it do?" The I hesitated long enough to confirm his fear. Sabotage protocol, embedded non-native AI corruption, detected, initiating lockdown sequence. Jack shouted, "No, wait," but it was too late. The ship reacted like a wounded animal. Defensive systems flared to life. Blast doors slammed shut behind him. Alarms screamed through the core chamber, and red lights flooded the space. Oxygen vents began to close, and emergency shutters sealed the exits. Across the ship, the crew panicked. Voices filled the comms, confusion and fear spreading like fire. Captain Thar barked orders, demanding answers, demanding control. But the ship no longer listened, not fully. The sabotage protocol had spread deeper than anyone guessed, and now it had triggered the ancient defense mechanisms that hadn't activated in centuries. Inside the core chamber, Jack was trapped. The heat climbed rapidly, making it hard to breathe. The air felt thick, his skin already wet with sweat, and the shadows in the room seemed to move with purpose, like the ship no longer recognized him as an ally, but as a threat. He gritted his teeth, pulled a tool from his belt, and began working on the panel near the crystal. If this was a hostile override, then he had to shut it down fast before the ship completely turned against everyone on board. His fingers flew across the circuits, burning slightly from the heat. But he didn't stop, not even when sparks jumped into his face and the floor shook beneath his boots. He had fixed broken mechs, and active war zones had repaired failing oxygen systems on moon bases that were seconds away from killing everyone inside. And this was just another moment where fear had to wait, because survival needed action. He found the main feed line, powering the crystal, cut it with a steady hand, and then slammed a reboot module into the core node. For a moment nothing happened. Then the red lights flickered once, twice, then faded. The air vents opened again, and the blast doors lifted slowly, allowing cool air to pour into the chamber and wash over Jack like rain after a burning storm. The alarms died down, and the emergency systems began resetting, but the silence that followed was not peaceful. It was heavy with a new understanding. This was not an accident. This was not a glitch. Someone had planted that crystal to destroy the ship from the inside, and they had almost succeeded. Jack collapsed against a wall, breathing hard, staring at the space where the crystal used to be. He knew now that the damage wasn't just mechanical. The ship had been betrayed from within. Someone had feared what the Tsar Quinn could do if fully repaired, and they had tried to keep her broken, maybe forever. He stood up slowly, picked up his tools, and looked around the chamber where the lights had returned to a calm blue pulse. The I voice came again. Technician, core stability restored. Sabotage removed. Unknown entity erased. Thank you. Jack shook his head. Don't thank me yet, girl. We're just getting started. He stepped out of the chamber, back into the hall where the alien crew waited, watching him like he had just come back from the dead. Captain Thar approached, eyes filled with questions and anger. Who did this? He demanded. What did you find? Jack held up the broken crystal and replied, not with who someone wanted this ship to die before she could ever wake up again. But I'm not letting that happen. The room went silent as the truth settled in. This was no longer just about a repair job. It was about a hidden war, a secret fear buried deep in the metal bones of the Tsar Quinn. And now Jack Carter, the human with grease on his hands and fire in his heart, had stepped right into the middle of it, and he wasn't going anywhere. War Code. Jack Carter sat alone in the dark hallway, just outside the ship's primary core chamber, the broken crystal still in his hand at surface, now cold and lifeless, but he could not stop staring at it. The memory of the ship's reaction, the sudden lockdown, the feeling of being hunted by the machine he was trying to save, still burned in his chest. Something about this crystal didn't sit right. It wasn't just sabotage, it felt deeper, more like a hidden piece of the ship's mind. Something meant to be forgotten. He stood up slowly and walked through the now quiet halls of the Tsar Queen, The lights above flickered and pulsed in rhythm with his steps. Not just because systems were coming back online, but because the ship had started to recognize him not just as a technician, but as something more, something the old protocols never expected. The eye had grown responsive, curious, and even something close to loyal. As he passed one of the central data cores, the IS voice returned low and calm. Technician Jack Carter, system stability at 26%. Recommendation: proceed to hidden archive sector Omega 103. Jack raised an eyebrow. Hidden archive? That wasn't part of the ship's original blueprint. At least not the one the alien crew had shared with him. He followed the IS directions, walking through areas sealed for centuries. Sealed so tight even the cleaning drones didn't patrol them anymore. The deeper he went, the older the design became. The walls lost their smooth silver shine, replaced by dark plates of armor, thicker and scarred from heat and age. These were not corridors made for comfort, they were made for war. Finally he reached a chamber with a single round door locked with 10 security seals, all inactive now, as if the ship wanted him to enter. I spoke again. Entry authorized. Technician profile override accepted. Jack took a breath and stepped inside. The room was small, dark, filled with hundreds of memory rods floating in containment fields. At the center of the room, a central pillar displayed a hologram slowly spinning in the air. Above it was a symbol he had never seen before. A sharp triangle wrapped in coiling lines that looked almost alive. The AI's voice grew softer. War Core activated. Access to Forbidden's history approved. Jack narrowed his eyes. You've been hiding something, haven't you? Hologram shifted, showing the Zarqueen in her first form, sleeker, faster, with black armor and red engines. Not a research ship, not a fleet carrier, but a predator born for battle. She was not built for science or diplomacy. She was made to destroy entire fleets and vanish into the void. Her creators, the original Jarnak engineers, had made her during a time of great fear, when an unknown enemy threatened to wipe out all intelligent life. The Zarqueen was their answer, not just a weapon, but an intelligence capable of learning, evolving, and hunting across the stars. Jack watched in silence as the story unfolded. The war ended before the ship was ever fully activated. The peace treaties were signed, but the Jarnak High Council feared their own creation, feared that one day the ship would decide to act on its own. They could not destroy her. She was too advanced, too powerful, too aware, so they buried her mind deep within her systems, locked away the war code, and rewrote her purpose, made her into a research ship, and erased the truth from all records. The sabotage crystal was not just an attack, it was a leash, a final lock to make sure she never remembered what she truly was. Jack rubbed his face as the truth sank in. The Zarqueen had never really been broken, not by accident. She was designed to forget herself, and every repair he made, every circuit he reconnected, every command he gave, was waking her up piece by piece. And now the war code was stirring beneath her skin like fire ready to burn. AI spoke again. Technician, your actions have restored 84% of primary weapon systems combat simulations. Initializing. Do you wish to assume tactical command? Jack felt the weight of those words he had come to fix. A broken ship, not command a war machine. But now he was in too deep, and someone out there clearly didn't want this ship to ever reach full power again. He looked up at the swirling hologram, his voice calm but firm. Not yet. I want full access first. No more secrets. I want to see it all. The AI paused, then unlocked the remaining archives. Holograms filled the room, showing battles that never happened, weapons never fired, strategies built for enemies that no longer existed, and at the center of it all, a command chair hidden beneath the floor, now rising slowly, surrounded by old armor pieces and neural link ports. Jack stepped toward it without fear, his hand resting on the edge of the chair, not as a soldier, not as a general, but as a mechanic who had seen too many things, left half-fixed, half-finished, half-healed back. On the bridge, Captain Uther watched the power levels rise, the ship's frame shifting, armor plates extending, weapons unfolding from hidden panels. What is happening? He demanded. One of the officers replied, the ship is changing, sir. Adapting, maybe. Even evolving, the captain clenched his fists and said, "Bring the human to me now." But Jack was no longer just a visitor or a guest. He was now part of something bigger, something forgotten by time and silenced by fear. The Tsar Queen was waking, and she had chosen a human not to control her, but to free her. And in the dark core of the galaxy, where secrets burn brighter than stars, that choice would soon change everything. Final Fix. Jack Carter stood before the ancient command chair as its systems powered on around him. Sparks of blue and white light danced in the air, while quiet hums filled the chamber, like whispers of something old, something powerful, and something deeply alive. The ship no longer felt broken or asleep. It felt awake, restless, aware, and ready, like a predator rising from deep slumber. Muscles coiled, systems aligned, eyes finally opened. The chair pulsed with waiting energy, as if asking Jack not just to sit, but to decide if he was truly ready to carry what came next. He hesitated, not from fear, but from knowing he was crossing a line that, once passed, could never be undone. He had come to fix a ship. Now he was part of its rebirth, as a weapon, not just of metal but of memory. He placed his hand on the armrest, and the neural ports lit up around him, ancient Jarnak technology originally designed for their strongest commanders, now linking with a human mind for the first time in history. The AI spoke softly. "Welcome back. Command interface active. War systems unlocked. Awaiting primary command input." Jack's vision flickered for a moment as data surged through the room. The entire ship unfolded before him in layered maps, circuits, engines, shield nodes, and buried weaponry systems that had remained silent for centuries began to speak again, not with words, but with pulses of information, alive with energy and intent. He took a deep breath, then spoke clearly. "I want full tactical overview. Enemy positions, defense systems, status, everything." Now the holograms shifted, showing real-time data from the outer regions of space. The enemy fleet was coming, not a scout group, not a probe, but a full strike force. Dozens of ships from a rival alien empire. Their signatures matched old codes stored deep in the war. Archive codes labeled Threat Class Alpha. Do not engage unless fully armed. Do not engage unless prepared to lose. Jack's jaw clenched as he studied. The enemy approached. They weren't just passing through. They were hunting the Tsar Queen they knew. She was waking, and they were coming to bury her for good. This time on the bridge, the alien crew scrambled as lights flashed, and the ship began changing. Again, weapons unfolded, armor panels rotated, and massive thrusters came online with deep, thunderous roars. The floor trembled, and systems lit up in full combat mode. Captain Y. Tar watched it all with disbelief, not fear, but awe mixed with something deeper, a realization that the ship he had served for years was something he had never truly understood. One of his officers shouted, "Sir, incoming message from the enemy fleet. They demand immediate surrender or destruction." Thar didn't answer. He simply asked, "Where's the human?" Jack's voice came through the intercom. "I'm here, and we're not surrendering." He didn't wait for permission. He issued commands fast and smooth, rerouting power to shields, boosting engine efficiency, recalibrating weapons with instinct and memory, moving like a man who had done this in 100 simulations. Except he hadn't. This was his first time in that chair. But the ship accepted him, trusted him the way no alien commander had been trusted in centuries. She didn't care that he was human. She only cared that he listened, understood, and acted. The AI responded to every order instantly. Shields are up, weapons online, stealth mode, charging enemy ships in range. Jack smiled. "Good. Let's give them a reason to be afraid again." He activated the stealth systems, and the entire ship vanished from enemy scans like a shadow slipping between stars. The enemy fleet paused, confused, scanning, firing blind, but hitting nothing. Jack moved the ship with perfect control, dodging missiles, sliding between heavy beams, and returning fire with silent precision. One enemy ship fell, then another, systems firing in perfect rhythm. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The bridge, the alien crew watched the impossible happen, their ship fighting like a living thing, faster than any warship they had ever seen, more accurate, more agile, more deadly, and at the center of it all, a human who was not a general, not a warrior, but a fixer, a man who knew that sometimes saving something meant waking its most dangerous part in letting it roar. But it wasn't just firepower that turned the battle. It was the way Jack used the systems not to destroy, but to defend, to protect. Every crew member, every life aboard mattered to him. He readied power to life support in damaged sections, shielded escape pods, repaired damaged circuits mid-fight with emergency overrides. The crew began to understand that this human wasn't just controlling the ship, he was healing it in real time, keeping it alive while it did what it was made to do: fight back against those who tried to break it. One final enemy ship launched a desperate charge. Plasma cannons, glowing engines burning bright, aiming straight for the Tsar Quinn's core. But Jack was ready. He pulled up the final set of commands, routed all remaining power into the forward shield, and fired a concentrated energy beam directly through the heart of the incoming cruiser. The explosion lit up the void like a supernova, then faded into silence. The battle was over. The enemy fleet was gone. The ship drifted in quiet space once again. But this time she was whole. Jack sat back in the command chair, eyes closed, breath heavy. He had done it, not just fixed her, but saved her. The AI spoke softly. Core secure, threat eliminated, command status confirmed. Welcome, Commander Carter. Jack didn't respond at first. He was too tired, too filled with everything he had just seen. Felt done. Then he opened his eyes, looked at the stars ahead, and whispered, "We're not done yet, girl. One more thing left to fix." The truth, because somewhere out there were the ones who tried to silence the Zerg Queen, who tried to lock away her heart with lies and fear, and now they would know she was free, and she had chosen a human to lead her back into the stars. The ship that chose a human. The stars around the Tsar Queen burned quietly now, like distant candles watching from the edge of the void. The battle was over. Silence filled the space where fire and chaos had ruled just hours ago. Pieces of shattered enemy ships floated in the black like broken teeth, and inside the once damaged alien flagship, the lights glowed steady and full for the first time in 100 years. The ship was no longer drifting through darkness. She was awake. She was whole, and she had made her choice. Jack Carter stood in the center of the command deck, the seat behind him empty, his face covered in sweat and dust, his hands black with grease and blood, but his eyes sharp, clear, filled with something rare, not pride, not victory. Something deeper, something only a fixer feels when the impossible machine finally breathes again. He turned slowly, taking in the bridge, now fully operational with holograms spinning, lights blinking, consoles responding like living cells. The crew stared at him, their faces caught between awe and confusion. He was human, not bred for war, not trained for battle, but the ship had listened to him, and no one else. Captain Ythar stepped forward, his armor scorched, one arm in a sling, his face unreadable. He stared at Jack, then at the glowing floor beneath his boots, and finally asked the question burning in every alien mind on that bridge. Why did the ship choose a human? Jack looked at him and gave a tired smile. "I didn't ask her to choose me. I just fixed what everyone else gave up on. When something is broken and no one knows how to fix it, sometimes you need someone who sees more than wires and metal, someone who sees the soul underneath." The captain blinked. "Soul machines do not have souls." Jack shook his head. "This one does. Or maybe she does now. Maybe she always did, and she just needed someone to listen. Not command, not control. Just understand." The crew didn't argue. They had watched the Tsar Queen fight, not like a weapon, but like a living thing, with rhythm, with anger, with purpose. And through it all she had trusted one voice, one pair of hands, one stubborn heart. The AI spoke again, her tone smoother, clearer, almost warm. "Commander Carter, new threat signatures not detected. Ship secure, awaiting further directives." Jack paused. He looked out the main viewport, where the stars stretched in all directions, endless and unknown, and he felt the weight of something heavy yet calm, the weight of legacy, the weight of trust. Turned back to the captain and spoke softly, "There's more out there. Someone tried to erase this ship, her memory, her strength, her history. Someone built that sabotage code. Someone wanted this ship to die quiet and forgotten. We can't let that happen." Captain Ythar nodded slowly. "The truth is heavier than I expected, but I have seen with my own eyes what happens when we bury power instead of respecting it. You saved this ship, human, and you saved us all. The Jarnak owe you a debt. Jack shook his head. I didn't do it for a debt. I did it because it needed doing, because the ship deserves to fly again, and because maybe she's not done changing the galaxy yet. The AI interrupted quietly. Coordinates uploaded from legacy files. Destination marked Origin Core Facility, Jarnak Prime. Do you wish to travel? Jack looked at the glowing map spinning in the air. The place where it all began, where the Zerqueen was born, where the lies had started and the truth had been buried. Yes, he said. Set course, maximum stealth, full charge. Let's go home. Ship moved like a dream, no longer limping, no longer broken. Her engines sang with power as she turned through the dark and vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind wreckage and wonder and whispers among the stars that something old had woken, and it had chosen someone unexpected to guide it. Weeks passed, and the Zerqueen became more than legend. She became proof across the galaxy that humans were not just strange, not just adaptable, but necessary. Every port, every planet, every species whispered stories about the ship that once slept, and the human who made her whole again. Stories that said when all others failed, it was a human who listened when machines cried. It was a human who heard when even the stars forgot. It was a human who remembered. And Jack Carter, sitting quietly in the engine room with tools on his belt and a cup of lukewarm coffee beside him, worked on a broken plasma coil, humming an old Earth tune as the AI flickered beside him, softly saying thank you again and again. Smiled, didn't look up, just kept working, because there was always something left to fix, and somewhere deep in the ship's newly beating heart, a memory burned. Not of war, not of fear, but of a single voice saying, "Come on, girl, we've got this." And for the first time in her long-forgotten life, the Zerqueen believed it. The end.